Thank you very much, Terry. Before I commence, I'd like to introduce myself. I'm René Hackstetter. I'm Vice Chair of the Huronia Museum, and I sit on our local Heritage Committee. Our two guests today, Mr. Eric Conroy and Ms. Jan Hawley, are both professionals in their field. Eric will be the first speaker, and I'm just going to give you a brief overview of Eric's biography, and then Jan's biography as well. Eric is the President and CEO of the charitable foundation known as the Friends of the Keewatin. With funding from Skyline Developments, Eric was able to purchase the SS Keewatin passenger steamship in 2011 and take the responsibility to return her to home port, Port McNicoll, in 2012. After some 47 years as a floating museum in Douglas, Michigan, Eric has founded a volunteer organization called the Friends of the Keewatin to restore and operate her in Port McNicoll as a major tourist destination. Eric's connection with the Key began in 1963, when at 17 he was hired by Canadian Pacific Railways as a waiter on the Key, as well as on her sister Great Lake passenger ship, the SS Assiniboia. Later milestones for Eric include graduating from the Ontario College of Education at the U of T, a 2-year stint as General Manager of the Canadian National Exhibition, and 30 years as the Public Affairs Advisor to the Canadian Association of Chiefs of Police. I'd just like to add, Eric's very modest about his accomplishments. It's an extraordinary thing that he's done to bring the Keewatin back. But Eric has another life as an author, and yes, this is a pitch. Stake in a Drawer is his book, and this is one of the books which Gil Blutrick, who is the CEO of Skyline Development, had read, and which encouraged him to go down and see Mr. Peterson with Eric, and subsequently purchase the Keewatin and bring it back. This was instrumental in the Keewatin returning, so I want to call your attention to that. And without that happening, we would not have the type of economic development that has been encouraged in Port McNicoll. And
is the book available here?
And I was just about to say, I'm sure that the book, I know the book is available on the Keewatin, so you're going to have to go over and tour the boat. And this past weekend, just so you know, Murdoch Mysteries was filming for the last 3 days with lots of the locals getting employment as extras, and Captain Eric with a set of lamb chops put on and looking very authoritative. Jan Hawley is the Economic Development Officer for the Municipality of Huron East, the County of Huron. And following an extensive career in the private sector and public service, particularly with the County of Huron's Community Futures Development Corporation, and then as manager of the business improvement area of Goderich, keenly interested in heritage conservation and port development, Jan co-founded the Marine Heritage Committee of the town of Goderich in 1998 and has co-edited a port promotion publication, written articles for various marine magazines, and participated as part of the sonar exploration team that discovered the wreck of the Wexford, a ship lost in the Great Storm of 1913 on Lake Huron. Her achievements in Huron East over the last 5 years have included award-winning downtown marketing initiatives and revitalization of the historic business districts of the town of Seaport and the village of Brussels, which will be featured on Rediscovering Canada television in the spring of 2013. I'd like to take at this time introduce you to Mr. Eric Conroy and Ms. Jan Hawley. And leading out the presentation will be Mr. Eric Conroy.
I left home at 17, ran away with a Great Lakes queen, most beautiful girl I've ever seen, mighty ship Keewatin. She slips the ropes in sunset light, do city boy magic. I lost my heart that moonlit night to the mighty ship Keewatin. The engines pound, the waters churn, 1,000 electric candles burn. Lords and ladies take their turn on the mighty ship Keewatin. Against the rail, no friendly light, no welcome port, no shore in sight. Long black smoke, jet black sky, on a lake as big as an ocean. Through the mist of dawn, I see crew canoes, push swiftly to the west. Steady stroke, warrior's power, burst through the towering waves. They drove the boats, they rang the bells. Their love and sweat she'll not forget, a mighty ship Keewatin. Her sisters sleep in the deep, or melted down for money. She shows us a world long gone, do we care enough to help her carry it on? Ran away with the Great Lakes queen. Checked out a boy, came back a man from the mighty ship Keewatin. I left home at 17, ran away with the Great Lakes queen, most beautiful girl I'd ever seen, the mighty ship Keewatin.
Good afternoon, and thank you for coming to hear the presentation on Keewatin. I actually speak a lot about Keewatin. It's part of our plan, which I'll discuss to greater length in a few minutes. But for any of you who have been to any of those presentations before, I promise it's not the same words this time. I'm using the same videos, but the words are different. I grew up in Midland in the summertime from 8 years old to 17. There used to be a campgrounds in Little Lake Park where you could rent a wooden platform. And our Irish immigrant family would come up here in a borrowed car after school was over in June. My father would rent a platform and put a tent on it, and he'd leave my mother and me and my 3 young brothers in the park for the summer and come back and get us in September. A fantastic way for a kid from downtown Toronto to grow up. The environment here was one of safety and comfort, and the biggest thing in my memory was, of course, what we still have here, the big lots and the beautiful old homes and the harbor and the ships. At 17, though, I was getting a little bored with hanging out in a tent with my mother and 3 younger brothers. So I started to spend a lot of time with some of what we used to call the townies. I can't tell you what they used to call us, but the local kids were called the townies. And a particular young lady who I quite liked from Port McNichol. And I spent a lot of time riding my bike over to see her. Well, her father was not terribly keen about her hanging out with a kid from downtown Toronto who lived in a tent with his mother and 3 younger brothers. And one day when I wasn't at the camp, which I very rarely was, he went to see my mother and told her what a young man I was, what a wonderful young man I was, and how he would like to help me with my future. and he had this opportunity to get me a job on a steamship as a trainee waiter. So within 3 days, I was a trainee waiter on the SS Keewatin. I never did see the girl again. But I've ended up having an affair all my adult life with Keewatin. I usually at this point go through and tell you what it was like to be a waiter and all the stories, but I'll pass through that because I want to get to what we're here to talk about, which is economic development based on developing historical properties. I have a background really is anything but historical. Other than I worked at the historical Canadian National Exhibition for a couple of years as a general manager. I used to be what Paul Godfrey used to call me his gunfighter. And politics was very different in those days, and the control of the municipality was very different. And as the Metro chairman, he could take someone like me and put me places. And one of the places he put me was at the CNE. So I learned a lot being a general manager there. I learned really how to raise money from sponsors. We went from having a sponsorship budget of about $200,000, and this is back in the 80s, to well over $4 million. Once we started to, instead of getting a belt buckle as a prize for a rodeo or a cup for the cows, we would start charging corporations major amounts of money to become partners. From there, believe it or not, he put me in the police department, helping to set up the public affairs unit. And from there, I ended up with the Canadian Association of Chiefs of Police. Along the way, Eaton's decided that they were no longer going to keep the Santa Claus Parade. And so I was asked by Mr. Godfrey if I would go on the board with some luminaries like George Cohan, the chairman of McDonald's, and a number of other very important people. And my job there was to raise money, and I spent 29 years with the Santa Claus Parade as a volunteer. And our goal, when I retired 2 years ago, was $1.4 million, and we raised our amount every year. We did not take any government money or government grants. And that was something that really became apparent to me. To run a powerful organization is the fewer partners you have telling you what you have to do, the much better your organization can run. So Keewatin came back in my life in about 1995, when I had always talked about it. I had 2 years on it where I, as it says in the song, became a man. Every life lesson a young boy should learn, I learned. From office politics to how to fight, to how to drink, to how to, well, we'll just leave it at that. So in 1995, I happened across a fellow who was a model builder. And he had a model of the Edmund Fitzgerald he was trying to sell it was like a flea market. So I bought it because I was quite familiar with the Edmund Fitzgerald. We used to see it all the time. We would pass it in the St. Mary's River, and they'd blow the whistles and ring the bells. Everybody would run upstairs and see this massive piece of steel sailing the other way, and everybody'd wave, and it was quite exciting. So I liked the boat. And I asked him if he could build me a model of Keewatin, which he said he could. So I gave him what pictures I had and little information I had, because I thought it had been scrapped back in 1965. And a week or so later, he called me and he said, she's still alive. She's in a place called Saugatuck, Michigan. She was bought by some guy who towed her down there, and he runs it as a museum. So I told my wife we were going for a drive. And 6 hours later, when we ended up in Saugatuck, Michigan, there she was. And she looked just like the last day I saw her. And we went on board, and the carpets were the same, and the chairs were the same, and everything was the same. So I asked to meet the guy that owned it, and did eventually, and over the years became friends. And we would spend, every time we got a chance to go down there, I'd go down there. Plus that book that Renee was talking about, I wrote that for him as a fundraiser. And it became it would be a Canadian bestseller for sure. We sold 7,000 copies, because the year we launched it was the year that they were announcing the Titanic movie. And of course, everybody thought that this was the next thing to Titanic, which actually it is. But it got a lot of publicity in all the papers in Western Michigan, and they couldn't keep them on the shelves. So it was a very successful little book. And I got a relationship with him that really was unique. He was just a very interesting fellow. You're going to meet him in a minute. I have another little video I'm going to show you before I get into actual the meat of the talk, which will set the stage for what I'm going to tell you. This is an 8-minute video, and really what it is it's a 1-minute introduction for a TV documentary called Bringing Her On Home, which was done by one of the producers for Discovery Channel. We did it because we thought we would be able to get CBC to play it, but CBC said it's not Canadian enough. So I'll leave you to judge that. So we've taken another tact, and we are showing it in movie theaters across the country, and it's becoming quite successful. And I think we're going to get a deal with another broadcaster to try and put it on. So let me show you the 8-minute video, and then we'll talk about history and economic development.
This is the last voyage of a great old liner, inspired by two men whose love for the ship have kept her afloat and shining for the last 45 years. It'll be the toughest voyage the SS Keewatin's ever had.
I never get worried for disaster. She's head bottom.
I understood that there's no way this ship can go back to the deep water.
There's 9-hour winds, the boat was jetting sideways.
To everyone who meets her, the Key is a living being with a heart and soul.
Farewell, your wife. We will miss you, but we will hold you in our hearts.
I want to see you. Stay home forever. Just 2 down to Lewis.
She's been a long time in exile. Now, thanks to the love of a few good men, she's on her way home. The SS Keewatin. She's the last surviving passenger ship from the Titanic era. A beautiful liner who once plied the Great Lakes and helped open up a new country, Canada. Built in 1907, the Keewatin originally sailed from Owen Sound. Beginning in 1912, she and her sister ship, the SS Assiniboia, took on passengers arriving in newly built Port McNicoll. They came on the boat train from Toronto, bound for what is now Thunder Bay, a 2.5-day journey. For its time and place, the SS Keewatin was the most luxurious ship afloat on the Great Lakes. As the passengers flooded in and the boat sailed back and forth, the town prospered. Eric Conroy spent summers in Port McNicoll, Ontario, home base for the SS Keewatin when she was still a working ship.
They had an opening for a waiter. They were given this opportunity to meet girls, and the first girl I met kissed me. She said to me, "You don't do this much." And I thought, God, quite deflated. The next day we were in Fort William and her family were getting off, and she turned and gave me an envelope. There's $200 in it. $200 in those days was an amazing amount of money. So I guess I wasn't that bad at history.
The Keewatin turned 17-year-old Eric from a boy to a man, but his youthful love affair with her ended badly. The Keewatin's sister ships were either sold for scrap or burned and sank decades ago.
I walked away from that ship being told that Keewatin was going to be sold for scrap and she would not be operating in 1965. It was a very sad day, not only for all the young people who worked on the ship, but certainly for the town of Port McNicoll.
The man who saved her from the welders' torches, maritime history buff R.J. Peterson. In 1967, R.J. had her towed to his marina in Douglas, Michigan. The Keewatin quickly won the hearts of the townspeople.
I love her dearly. She's a beautiful piece.
We love her. I mean, she was singing because it was always a great experience.
She becomes a living, breathing thing.
A great iconic symbol, so excited.
With R.J. now in his 80s, the time and energy needed to maintain the Keewatin is becoming too much. He's ready to let the key go.
I never did have the time to really, enjoy the ship as I thought I would.
and that attracted the attention of Toronto developer Gil Bluetridge. He's planning a residential complex on the old CBR Portlands.
And then I met Eric. It was a great story. I was fascinated by Eric and the commitment that he did for the ship for over the years.
I volunteered. I started to help him do his marketing, and I would write his press releases and do his promotions for him, and I wrote a book for him, and became really close friends with R.J. Peterson.
RJ tells Eric he's ready to make a deal, and Eric passes the news to Gil.
Because, you know, if I couldn't keep up with the skiway, with the maintenance and the supervision, you know, there's a time, Gil said to me, can you bring this back? I had to say to myself, I don't know, but if anybody can do it, I'll do it for you. And he said, okay, let's go.
The risk Gil's taking is huge. After 45 years, the Keewatin's keel is buried in 4 feet of mud. Unless a channel can be dredged, the key's staying put.
It'll be a mile-long channel, 50 feet wide and 10 feet deep. The boat is 48 feet wide and 10 foot deep. You know, I didn't remember all the dredging before, but I had the cable dredging. Mr. King said, oh, it's going to be an interesting extraction because we've decided to take her up backwards. So what we have to do is we have to ballast the bow of the ship so the stern of the ship comes up so that she's got an even 10 foot in terms of her draft.
It seems the entire population of Saugatuck and Douglas, Michigan has turned out to say goodbye. After 2 hours of steady pulling, the key simply refuses to leave. The stern is still too low. The rudder and prop are stuck. Engineers on the job work all night to try and come up with a solution. The next day, more ballast bags are brought on board to raise the stern still more. The key finally moves. It's a delicate maneuvering job. Ever so gently, she moves down the river. The SS Keewatin seems to be finally on her way home. The next morning, she heads into the Great Lakes. She hasn't seen these waters for nearly 50 years.
Coming up to Tobermory, which is in our own neighborhood. So I'm getting the feeling this is actually a good ending, a very happy ending.
It's 10 a.m. at Portman Mill, and the welcoming ceremonies are well underway.
The town was created, it was Little Chicago, it was the hub, this was the place to be. And of course, when the steamship stopped, the train stopped, the elevator stopped, the town kind of died out. So having this come back and at such a scale, it's just a bonus to the community.
Well, my grandfather worked as a purser on Yasinoa, and then he finished, and then he transferred over to the Keewatin, and he worked as a purser there as well.
These were waiters on the Keewatin when I was on there in 1953, 54, and 55.
It looks like every boat in South Georgian Bay has turned out to welcome the Keewatin home.
There's boats everywhere. It's a sight that'll probably never happen again because these people got a connection with this boat that we just don't understand.
She is the missing link in Canadian railroad history. We are sad to see her go, but we know that she is returning home where she belongs.
There is a very strong connection between past, present, and future, and you cannot build as Canadian our future without respect for the past.
A lot of people said it would never, ever happen. If you've got a vision, you've got a dream, there it is. You are getting the Keewatin back in the same condition as it was when it went out of service. The waters have woven into the tapestry of the through the sport, and today she starts a new chapter. Back in the day.
My wife likes this part. So a massive gift from the Americans back to us. You can imagine, you heard the young man on there say, an iconic symbol of Saugatuck. That man was obviously under 45 years old because he'd grown up with it. It was there his whole life. He had school trips on it. He probably partied on it. He probably worked on it. It's a whole story about how we got them to give it up, which I'll have to tell you another time because it really doesn't fit in here, other than the fact that we took an economic crutch from them away when we brought her back to Canada. But she is probably, historically, the largest artifact ever retrieved back to Canada from a foreign country, ever. But it's not Canadian enough for the CBC. I'm not mad about that, honest. So the story really begins, as far as this talk is concerned, the year before I actually started digging the trench to get her out of down there. I would split my time between Saugatuck and Midland, where I would hold meetings in the local Legion Hall, because it was free. We had no money. And tell people that I was bringing the Keewatin back. Now, I want you to think about what the circumstances would be like if you stood in front of a room full of adults and told them that Santa Claus was real and he was coming to visit them. I had about the same reaction. People had for years wanted the Keewatin to come back, were angry that it left in the first place. It had been offered to the town of Port McNichol, which it was in those days, for $1, and they turned it down. But then, of course, they wouldn't have known what to do with it back in 1967. Things have changed a lot, you know, and they weren't really grasping what was about to happen to them. It was a town of about 8,000 people. It had a big hotel, it had a big railway yards, it had a curling rink, it had a hockey arena, it had a theater, it had bars and restaurants and 2 banks. And from 1967 to 1970, the population went to just under 400 people. And it really hasn't come back that much other than cottagers since then. Matter of fact, it's the closest thing to a ghost town as you'll find. So here I am telling anybody that'll listen to me that I'm going to bring Keewatin back, and I'm going to ask for your help to do it. I want volunteers. I want people that want to bring it back, that want to get involved in all aspects of the ship. And so that was part of the job. The other part of the job was raising the money. I had a prime candidate in Skyline Development who have bought the old lands over there. And don't believe what you read in the newspapers. The development is going ahead. They're just jostling for position right now. I went to see Gil Blutrich, and it took me 20 minutes in July of 2011 to get him to write me a $50,000 check as a deposit to R.J. Peterson, which I went downstairs with my wife in the car, and we drove directly to Saugatuck and started negotiating, and we bought it on the 15th of August, 2011. Skyline's commitment to us was to pay for the ship, the dredging, the towing, the legal bills, everything to get the ship from where it was back to here. I can't tell you what we paid for the ship, but it was a bargain. What I can tell you was the total budget came to $2.5 million. For something as phenomenal as this, a treasure, it was cheap. Getting people to be involved with it was a little harder. So we did a couple of things. I sent some people down to see it, some of the local people I felt would have influence on others. And slowly but surely we started to put together a little team. And the first thing they did was organize the Welcome Home Day. We didn't use any professional organizers. We used all local people. They generated their own capital to do it. They had no money from Skyline. And they put on that event. And it was spectacular because we had over 7,000 people show up, over 1,000 boats, the police told us, and not one incident, not a stolen purse, not an assault, not a drink driving, nothing. So it turned out to be a sensational day. It also turned out to be the beginning of a lot of hard work for these people, because although the ship had been relatively well cared for, as Mr. Peterson had gotten older, and he had less time and really less money. Where it was in Saugatuck, Michigan was on a secondary highway, sort of somewhere between Grand Rapids and Chicago. That if you happened to be taking secondary highways, you might run across it. He did no advertising. He might put a couple of thousand people a year through the ship. So it was pretty rough shape. So the first thing they had to do was clean it, which they did. And then we would have meetings and talk about who did we think we could approach for support. And as I told you with the Santa Claus Parade, where we don't take any government money, we unanimously as a group decided we would not ask for any government money here either. And so we slowly went out and found people like Home Hardware, who provide us with all our materials. We found Huroney Alarms, who did all our alarm work and all our inside work. S&G Electronics, Tritech Plumbing, local contractors. And we put from the 23rd of June last year, for just about a year, to when we opened on May the 11th, over 7,000 hours of volunteer time into Keewatin. The fortunate thing is the developer has reached an agreement with us to give us a 3-year lease on the ship at $1 a year. And at the end of that 3 years, he'll have the ship valued. And now that we are a registered charitable foundation, we will give him a donation certificate, and you can all figure that out. It's going to be worth a whole lot more 3 years after it got here than what it was when it got here. Plus, it'll be a business. We opened for 4 weeks last fall. We called it a sneak a peek. We didn't really tell anybody we were doing it. We just sort of did it. We put 5,100 people through the last 2 weeks of September and the first 2 weeks of October, and every second day was rain. That translated into $51,000 because we only charged $10 a head. And we sold $27,000 in hats and t-shirts. We started running little dances and bake sales. And then we got a big dance we did with the local Martells, which is a big local band around here. We put another $15,000 in the bank that way. We're selling our lifeboats. If you want to buy a lifeboat and dedicate it to your ex-husband or your ex-wife, I'd be more than happy. It's only $10,000. And you can put their name on it, and it'll be gone forever, you know. And the other thing we did is we looked for ways to promote an advertising without having to spend money. And the little videos you just saw are part of a presentation I do, and I started doing it last fall. And I've been to, I think, 52 Provost clubs. I've been to at least 40 Rotary clubs, Lions clubs. I've talked in church basements. The Royal Canadian Yacht Club have had me back twice to talk about Keewatin and translate those talks. They usually give you $100 for coming. They buy the book, which is nice. But I end up getting busloads of people. When we opened on May the 11th, we already had 62 buses booked for this year. And that's without going to any of the bus companies or spending a nickel on advertising. And we continue to do that. We also went out through my past to find people that would be interested in finding other ways to promote Keewatin and bring us money. So as Renee sort of dropped my secret, we had the Murdoch Mysteries this week. They started Monday, they finished last night at midnight. And they paid us $20,000 for the use of the ship. Plus, I would guess that they put at least $20,000 worth of upgrades and curtains in the ballroom and painting walls and polishing floors and doing things that helped us make the ship look like they wanted it to look like. So it's been a pretty spectacular June, even not being completely open to the public. We will continue to do that. We have had great response from the province of Ontario. You probably have seen the magazine that came out in the spring for things to do in Ontario, and you'll see that we are prominently positioned there. The three major attractions that they're looking at this year are the Legoland, the Ripley Museum at the CN Tower, and Keewatin. We position Keewatin as not a museum. We call it a historical destination. Those of you that come on the tour will enjoy it because, you know, it's young people, it's old people. I don't know who you're going to get. It could be somebody who's 17, it could be somebody who's 84, because I've got all in between. But the passion that they have for that ship and the knowledge that they have to make it work is phenomenal. So utilizing a town that considered itself to be secondary. I mean, there wasn't a lot of egos in Port McNicoll when I first went there to talk to them. You tell them today that you like their town, and they'll tell you why you should like your town, because Keewatin's back. We plan on seeing that Keewatin will be a focal point for people that want to step back into the past. We are going to be historically correct in everything we do, and we cover a wide range of time. The ship was built in 1907 in Govan, Scotland. It came to Canada, and it's quite renowned in that it was taken apart into two pieces in Quebec City and towed to Buffalo, New York, where it was reassembled because it was too big to get through the St. Lawrence locks and the Welland Canal. And in fact, she is one of 5 ships that the Canadian Pacific ran starting in 1884. And they all were taken apart. They were all built in Scotland. They all look quite similar. And we have artifacts, stretching back to the early ships as well. So we've got this huge historical story to tell. We've got a 350-foot long, 8 million pound artifact to show it with. And she came with everything on her that she had when she left in 1964, including, this is one reason that people think she's alive. You heard the woman say she's a live, living thing. She really has a spirit, and once you get involved with her, you're involved. She has you. We call it being bitten in the ass by Keewatin, because once she gets you, you don't get away. One of the first things we had to do was wash the walls because it was so dirty, and there was a crew working down one of the passageways, and the tour guide will show you. And they found a panel, and in the panel there was a set of hinges down one side that had been painted over, and there was no handle or anything. So they thought that was odd looking, and we decided to take the panel apart and see what was inside. And we found 13 cartons hidden behind the wall with all the dishes, all the silverware, all the knives and forks, everything for the dining room had been hidden in this closet, covered over. We think in the 60s somebody was going to steal it, and they, for whatever reason, didn't get back on the boat before it went away. And actually, I called the American, R.J. Peterson, and I asked him, "Did you know that was there?" And he said, "Hell no, or you wouldn't have got it." Those are the kinds of surprises that we get. And we got everybody trying to help us out. The local radio station here, the Doc, talk about us all the time. We do well with the local TV station in Barrie. The local newspapers support us. The local people support us. We do things like 12 and under are free. School kids on school trips are free. We don't charge them for that. We expect to put 100,000 people, that's our goal, this year through the ship on an average of $10 a head. Virtually, if I keep my cost to 30%, that'll give us $700,000 a year to put back in the ship in hard costs. And then we've got all these people that keep giving us things that go with that. So I expect after 3 or 4 or 5 years, she'll be quite spectacular. She's spectacular now. The engine has, there's 5 old guys, we call them the engineer crew. The youngest is 76, the oldest is 84. And they come every Monday and have since the ship came back, worked all through the winter with no heat. They took this massive engine that's 3 stories high, would fit in this room, almost. And they took it all apart, cleaned it, put it all back together again, and they've designed a motor that will be installed next week, actually. So when you come in, the pistons will be going up and down in this massive, huge engine that's very similar to what was on Titanic. So there's going to be a number of things like that we're putting in a radio room, again, with all the local volunteer ham operators from this whole region. And we've taken out all the officers' quarters on the top deck, and we're putting a radio museum in where kids can go in and on a keyboard send themselves an email at home, and when they get home, turn on their computer, and the email will come on in Morse code and letters at the same time. So there's anything we can do. We're going to put an all-weather radar system and then give free apps to the whole community so that you can get your weather right from Port Nickel instantly. You know, again, marketing without spending money. So there's no secret to it other than the fact that we try to get everybody involved. We put together an organization that functions as a group of friends as opposed to a structured organization. We have departments, you know, housekeeping department and an engineering department, and we've got a sailoring department, and we've got a painting group, and we've got a group of electricians, but they all work together as a team. And when they aren't doing that, they're taking tours. So it really does work in and out when you're dealing with anybody on Keewatin. Everybody knows what they have to talk to you about. So I do hope you'll all come to visit us. We've worked very hard since last night when the film crew left to get it cleaned up for you today, if you're coming on today's tour, or tomorrow. Tomorrow will be absolutely spotless. Today will just be great. So, you know, as a secret, develop enthusiasm, find a way to get the community involved, reach out to local businesses. You know, it's amazing the number of businesses there are that if you ask them, don't necessarily ask them for money, ask them to be involved, they'll get involved. And with that, I'd like to thank you for your time, and I hope you enjoy the rest of your conference. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Captain Rick. Our next speaker is Jan Hawley, and Jan is just going to take a moment to prepare her presentation.
Thank you.
I need yours. I may need you. Okay, now, I'm a Mac user, so I just need to slideshow. Oh, there we go.
Far left from the beginning.
Am I there yet?
Far left.
Far left?
Far left. Far left. There.
Right there?
There.
Oh, thank you very much to all you in the audience. Well, good afternoon. And Eric, I've got to tell you, that was phenomenal. I mean, talk about community revitalization. I mean, that is probably one of the best examples I have heard ever. Anyway, I'm Jan Hawley, the Economic Development Officer for the Municipality of Huron East, or EDO. A lot of people say, what in the heck is an EDO? Well, what I do is I work with business and economic development. You know, oh my gosh, probably you're thinking, oh, this could be really dry. But economic development is not all about job creation. It's about working with your community. It's about the essence of your community: education, health care, the social aspect. for me, I am in rural Ontario, and I see heritage as being very important to what I do. We're a large municipality. We're one of 9 that make up, we're a 2-tier government that make up Huron County, which is along Ontario's west coast. And I have 3 what I call historic settlements within my jurisdiction. And when I took on the position 5 years ago, 2 of them were in, I would say, decline. And so that was my first focus. But I had seen some good work that had already happened in the town of Seaforth, which also in its downtown, and this actually is our downtown in Seaforth, and it's a heritage conservation district. It was designated in 1984. It was a bold step, actually, for that community. That was pre-amalgamation. And since then, it's a very vibrant community, and we actually have 3% vacancy rate in our downtown, which is pretty phenomenal. But I believe heritage is good for business, and business is good for heritage as well. So what I'm going to do is, I have an 8-minute clip that I helped produce, and I have really, after doing it, I'm not a filmmaker. They're all stills. I worked with our county IT department, and it showcases the work that has happened in our downtown. We have a heritage tax relief program. We have lots of champions, one in particular, much like Eric, that really cares about what is happening in our core. And I'm so grateful for him. His name is Pete Claver. He also owns a construction company and owns a lot of property in the downtown. So it's worked out quite well. And I'm going to show this clip. It actually led us to a national award at OBIA, which is Ontario Business Improvement Area Association. And that was awarded to us in Thunder Bay last year for the work. So I'm going to just hopefully get to that point. Bear with me. Okay. It's called Dressing for Success.
The business district of the town of Seaforth, located within the municipality of Huron East, includes splendid examples of late 19th century architecture. Such building heritage reflects the center's former wealth and importance, and is representative of everything worth conserving in small town Ontario. Seaforth's historical and commercial blocks are visually integrated, and while exhibiting uniform design, possess individual detail as well. The use of distinct and richly modulated brick and tall windows in upper stories creates visual interest and ascribes a flourish to an otherwise homogeneous panorama. This subtle insertion of individuality does much to convey to us the structural taste of the original builder and owner. The composition of the town's vintage streetscape is explicitly brightened by the towers of its major public buildings. Unfortunately, in recent decades, this unique slice of history has been compromised and its form weakened by the introduction of modern structures and by the modification of facades and storefronts. Right to the rescue is local businessman and property owner Pete Claver. Traveling in Europe and Pete Claver's interest in antiquated architecture and eventually led to his investment in old local buildings. Growing up in Huron County has allowed him to develop an appreciation of the history of the area. In 1999 saw the beginning of Claver's property acquisitions in Seaforth. The architectural changes made on Main Street in the 1960s and 70s were like many things from that era. They aren't around anymore, he says with a smile. But what's left is an odd hybrid of old and not old. During his acquisition years, Claver fortuitously crossed paths with the late Debbie Somerville, a woman with style as well as an interior decorating business. Somerville's decades in the country operation included decor items, furniture, and paint. They were soon collaborating on restoration ventures, Claver renovating, and Somerville choosing colors and painting design. Somerville had been born and raised in Seaport and possessed an awareness of what her hometown had been while recognizing how old can become new again. Drawn to design as a child, she naturally became involved with interiors as a profession. I so enjoy my work, she once said. Along with helping people and getting to know the customers, the design field allows me to be into a contemporary look today and a more traditional one tomorrow, whatever the client's taste. Somerville's care and concern were part of her service. She didn't just sell interiors. She designed them based on visits to the customer's home, personalized consultation and insight. The Somerville-Claver Alliance was a good one, with each of them bringing their specialized skill set to projects of the heart. Claver's belief that you have to dress for success influenced his property development. He looked beyond the nondescript fronts and clumsy melange of architecture when he bought bargain-priced buildings, with a vision of what they could become. Refurbished, run-down buildings, reinstating their original role, and returning them to some semblance of past glory meant he attracted good tenants, while simultaneously improving Seaport's business district and neighborhoods. And so what is the restoration process, as developed by the former agriculture owner, manager, and construction, who had an obvious talent for renovation? First comes finding photos of the buildings as it once was, as it was initially constructed. Then there's the examination and assessment of its present condition and what's left of the original structure. Based on what can realistically be restored or renewed, design work follows, and eventually the reconstruction and installation of architectural detail by Claver and his staff. The final touch is, of course, the paint, and that's where Debbie Somerville would shine, choosing just the right colors to create the look of a day gone by while adding an up-to-date richness to the facade. And as luck would have it, in the basement of the nearby business, Tulip's Dental Center, a bit of original frontage was found, a beautiful wooden corbel, which is an architectural component that projects outward and upward from a wall supporting a horizontal member. Claver and Company fabricated corbels from the old model and added them along the friezes and dentils to produce a new entablature of various buildings in Seaport's historic business district. A typical example of Claver's Somerville touch is found in the Robert Scott block at 63 to 65 Main Street. Built in 1869, the then three-story structure included two retail areas on the ground floor, offices on the second, and living quarters above that, all with a steady succession of short and long-term tenants through the years. A 1905 fire badly damaged the upper floor, after which it was mostly removed and its windows bricked up. This commercial block, purchased by Claver, had been poorly altered and then stood empty. The storefronts for 3 years and the second floor apartments for 25. A project has to be worth renting. I started on the place before the ink was dry on the bill of sale, recalls Claver. It was a mess. I immediately began with scraping, sanding, and painting the outside. Part of the inside walls in the south building were plastered. Some were original brick. I took them right down to the lovely old brick. Next came upgrading and cleaning the interiors. The space next door to the north also required considerable work, inside and out. And when it was completed, it had new floors, ceiling, up-to-date wall treatments, new fixtures, and a new lease on life. The eventual tenants of the Scott block were Somerville, who moved her design store into the southern portion, and Timbers Outfitters, whose owner, Tony Forrest, decorated the north half with all manners of kayaks, canoes, tents, and outdoor gear, everything needed for paddling or camping. The freshly renovated block has been transformed into perfect storefronts on a revitalized section of Main Street that reflected another era. 55 and 57 Main Street, housing Clayton Sally's Plaza 2, and its neighbor, Tulip's Dental Center, got a new look as well. An inside-out facelift set off by beautiful heritage paint colors. Makeovers were catching on. Claver friend, KJ Chu, owner of Chu Insurance and Financial Services at 32 Main Street, was next to upgrade with Pete Claver's help. The structural cosmetic improvements, vintage paint, and restoration of a beautiful stained glass window. Claver's largest restoration is the dignified three-story commercial hotel at 84 Main Street South. This version of the commercial hotel was constructed to replace the original brick one built in 1866 but burned down on April 17, 1895. The new hotel opened to the public on October 21, 1895, in particular to service those traveling by railway located one block to the south. The architecture of the three-story structure is simple and robust, featuring horizontal detail linking the window arches and sills at each level, with pilasters delineating 4 sections vertically across the facade. The raised precast lettering and concrete panels stretch along its front proudly state commercial hotel to this day. With refurbishment of its interior and exterior, the reincarnation of the commercial hotel as planned by Claver will consist of 16 apartments updated, renovated, and warmly welcoming residents once again, along with strengthening the integrity, form, and function of Main Street. Pete Claver takes pride in having the buildings he owns look good, and having them reflect their history, and it's contagious, as evidenced by other enhancements happening in the town's historic business section. Dressing for Success has become an architectural fashion statement in Seaforth.
Okay, now. So that's just an example of some of the work that has been undertaken in the last couple of years, and that category was for bricks and mortar, and we're quite proud. And Peter actually was diagnosed with cancer not long after that film was put together, but happily I can say that he's doing very well, and we're just so proud to have him in our community. So, so how do heritage conservation districts size up? Well, I'll give you a great example. Okay, so almost 30 years ago, Seaforth took a bold step and designated their downtown under Part 5 of the Heritage Act. Currently, it has 54 commercial and civic buildings. The district accommodates 88 retail and service-related businesses, as well as accommodations on the upper levels of some of those buildings. In fact, some of those properties that Peter was renovating, they hadn't seen any residents on their second floor for about 25 years. So now, through renovations and restoration, we're getting people, more people living in our core. Of course, you all know that people living in your downtown is good for business. Also, with the repurposing of the commercial hotel, and 16 more apartments. What we're expecting, the first one, I think it's going to be ready as a model suite by July, and so hopefully by the end of this year, all of them will be opened up for rental space. Again, more people in your core is great. So again, as I mentioned, the vacancy rate is about 3% within the conservation district. And I also have a very healthy business mix. You know, there's all this talk about we need more retail, and well, those are a sign of the times. You know, people are mobile. A lot of, you know, homes have 2 cars in their driveway, so you know, you can get out and about. You're competing with big box stores and also with the internet. But still, saying that, I do believe that we have a really good retail and service mix. Also within my jurisdiction is the little village of Brussels, and that's not Brussels, Belgium, although named after that. And it elected at the same time, if we go back to 1984, not to designate their downtown. Now, it is a community of about 1,200 people. Yes, there has been a decline over the last half century in population. And like many small rural communities, it's struggling in the 21st century. Although, saying that, we undertook BRNE. I'm not sure if there's anyone that is familiar with that. It's a business tool, business retention and expansion. It's a survey. It helps people like myself to go out and engage the business community. And when we got to the question about quality of life, I think it was like 95 to 98% of those living and working in Brussels felt that it was very good to excellent. So the quality of life, we got that down pat. It's almost a contradiction, this little community. It had beautiful architecture. The community itself, it's built on a river, the Maitland River. The housing stock is excellent. Big old mansions, very well kept. I've got 2 blocks of properties, commercial properties, where a lot of them are boarded up. They're absentee landlords. I'm sure a lot of you recognize, you know, that term. Some of them have bought them and using them for a purpose other than what they were intended. It's a zoning C4 commercial, downtown commercial, and they put paper on the windows and boarded them up, and behind that, of course, they're storing goods. It's probably much more reasonable to buy property in downtown Brussels and bring your goods to be stored than renting space in Toronto. So that was my dilemma. And so you're coming through County Road 12, which actually is the same road that runs through downtown Seaforth, also continues all the way up to Brussels. So first impressions, you only get a few seconds to make an impression, good or bad. So let me see if I've got it. Okay, so here's a good example of some of the buildings in my downtown. So if you've never been to the community before and you're driving through and you turn to the right if you're going north and you take a look at this building here, you'd go, oh my gosh, this town is on its way out. And it's furthest from the truth. It is a contradiction. It's a very prosperous community. There is a great deal of wealth, but we do have this image problem our downtown. And so that's my job, and it's quite daunting. I only came into this position 5 years ago. I'm from the private sector, so I came over to the other side working for the public sector, and I'm just going, okay. So how am I going to tackle this? Well, first of all, I had to get the community on side, because you need your community behind you, and I couldn't afford, with my little budget, which is almost less than zero, to change the facade, make those visual improvements. So I went looking for a little bit of funding, certainly not the kind of funding that Eric has been successful in garnering, but I did find a little bit of funding, but I got the support of my people on side as well. And you can see here this building that will be on your left. That's all pink styrofoam in the window. Do you know, they're lovely people, but they don't live in the community, and again, as I was saying, the timing wasn't right for them to start opening up their doors. So I thought, okay, so how can I change this for not a lot of money? Well, I got this idea when I was at my sign maker one day, and I was thinking, okay, I could put some kind of vinyl graphics on those windows, create sort of like an outdoor art gallery, something to make it look pleasing. So if people were walking down our streets or driving through, maybe they'd look and sort of, reevaluate. So we got a group of people, actually, another girl and I. Her name is Renee Richmond, and she's a goer, and I'm going to tell you. We contacted the property owners, asked them if, first of all, because you have to be quite sensitive about this. I mean, I'm not going to go up and say, okay, I have this opinion about your property. What can we do? I said, first of all, we'd like to maybe use your windows for displays. If we were to, absorb the cost of that, how would you feel about that? And so, they were starting to get warm and fuzzy. Actually, the wife of the couple. And there was a little tiny bit of a language barrier, so we had to work through that. And we finally got the wife to convince the husband, which was very important. Okay, let us go ahead with that. And so this is what we did. I have a wonderful graphic artist who's part of my team, and they also too are sign makers. And they created some wonderful vinyl that actually, if you were to go inside the building, they allowed us access, and we were actually to adhere it to the inside of those buildings. And we created something like 14 different images. But getting back to the heritage component, so, well, what images do you use? I had like 10,000 in my collection. We actually went back into old postcards of the community itself and selected ones that we felt would be, good representation. And then I have a photographer that we have hired I've been working with her for 7 years. We actually went out to that site, so if it was along the river or the main street or whatever, and we took a modern picture, a current picture, at the same profile. And this is what we came up with. It was a then and now. And I'm telling you, did it ever catch on? I mean, we started to promote it as, the largest outdoor art gallery in Huron County. It sort of freshened up the downtown, gave it more life, and But most important is my own people, the people of the community, their attitudes started changing. And for me, I think that this was the catalyst for change in Brussels. And so we have a committee. We're called the Brussels Build Gang. Sometimes we call ourselves a posse. And they're doing some great work. This is one of the other properties that were, I know that I wasn't going to, because of attitudes, it's sometimes hard, you know, to change attitudes. And when I talk about conservation districts, so sometimes people, you know, they just don't accept it maybe the way you would want them to. So we did more of a soft sell. We did create, working with the University of Waterloo, a great group of fourth-year students, Dr. Shipley's planning class. They were fabulous. They created a cultural heritage landscape plan for us and also a wonderful walking trail throughout the community. Well, we're probably not going to have what we call a Heritage Conservation District in downtown Brussels, but we're starting to designate the properties and convince property owners that there is value in designating. So under Part 4, which actually I think has a little bit more weight, designating the properties one by one. Do I think I'm going to get them all designated? Probably not. But you know, it is catching on. This happened to be a picture, and I'm not sure exactly of the year, but this is now bought by a gentleman, and his name is Jim Lee, and he is originally from Owen Sound, and both him and his wife now are permanent residents of our area and have Cinnamon Jim's Cafe. And it's in this beautiful, and I think it's a flat iron design, lovely. They also have a little laundromat, so you can see this wooded structure. That's part of their property as well. They work with John Rutledge. I'm not sure, is John here? Oh. You're here? Oh, there you are. Okay. John worked on this project and...
my hometown.
Oh, absolutely. Yes. Actually, you can probably do this better than I can, John. I'm going to show you some of the results here. But anyway, here is the finished product. And I don't know, they used reclaimed brick from the American Hotel that unfortunately got demolished, which was right across the street. But the design is wonderful, and this is quite a little hub, by the way. So if anybody is up in Brussels and they need a wonderful meal, they're open for breakfast and lunch, and it's all homemade, and they're just great people. And upstairs, just to let you know, that's where they have some wonderful blues sessions, and some very well-known recording artists are there. Yes, in Little Brussels, who would ever guess? But Jim is quite a musician, he's also an engineer, and he also wanted to own a restaurant. Crazy man. But he was able to also utilize our Heritage Tax Relief Program. I know that there's a lot of communities throughout Ontario that actually have adopted this plan. For us in Huron County, we're actually the only municipality so far, but we, like Eric, go out and advocate. This is a wonderful program. Try and take advantage of it. So this is some of the good work that's happening. This property is the Lucky Block. It's just about 2 doors down from Cinnamon Jim's, and it's also going to be designated, I think probably, it's already, the recommendation's already gone to council. So that will make actually 3 properties in our downtown designated. So continuing with my little window murals, this is the Foodland property. Unfortunately, this is not the prettiest property. You know, no disrespect to Foodland, but you know, it's nondescript. This is where the wonderful Queen's Hotel used to be. And I'm not really sure, John, the history of the Queen's and why it was demolished. It was demolished, it wasn't burned, was it? It was demolished. Anyway, sort of to distract from all of that glass there are 12 windows along that wall which actually face the north. Using the historic walking trail program that the University of Waterloo had put together for us, we actually created more window art, and this is just one set of 4. And I also have brochures here today. If anybody would like to take one, would love to have you take it away with you and actually even come up and visit us. And they're in that the trades area where all the displays are. But this became very popular, and again too, just livened up the streets of downtown. Now this is our next project. This is the same building. Okay, so you can sort of see this brick wall, not of much interest, but we're looking to put the actual picture of what used to be there, which was the Queen's Hotel. Isn't that stunning? That is the most beautiful building. A portion of it is actually the pool house or the pool room, and then the facade is actually in the County Museum in Goderich in the Great Hall. So we did receive funding for this project, and in partnerships is a really important aspect of all of this. The Lions Club, that should happen this year. Oh, and here, look at our beautiful Carnegie Library. So you know, can you sort of sense that we're on a bit of a roll here? So spirits are up, things are happening. This, and John, again, John Rutledge, it's all about you, John. John Rutledge has, his heart and soul is in this property. This is our wonderful library that almost didn't, it was going to cease to be. But you know what? It was the voice of the people. The voice of the people. The people of Brussels did not want this to be anything other than a library. And we ended up with that. And our leadership, our leaders heard this desire to keep it as it was. And I'm so happy that John was able to, John, because you've been involved in that project. Is it about 7? We talked about this at lunch. I'm not even sure.
For 5.
Okay. So it's been a long time. So it's nice to see that work has started. I'm not sure what the completion date will be, but I'm hoping sometime this year. And I think John mentioned at lunch that it's probably going to double the size. So again, to fundamental planning, keep, these properties in your downtown. This is what attracts people to your core. And, again, too, it's about the quality of life. So we're very lucky. Again, another partnership. And I'm just giving you some examples of what, we're doing here in Huron East. Again, limited dollars, but, if you can get the right people to work with you, sometimes you can do it for a lot less. And the Brussels Streetscape Master Plan, we partnered with Dr. Wayne Caldwell, his advanced planning class from the University of Guelph, and wonderful work that they have done. This is on our wish list, all these wonderful things. But again, we needed some visuals to help, and so we brought in these master students, and I think that they have created some magical work. And so we're again looking to undertake some of this work in the next couple of years. Because of all this work that was undertaken in the last year, I did apply for another national award. You'll probably think that these things, you can get them out of popcorn boxes, but I'm thinking it's all in the presentation, but no, it's not. It's in the work that's being done, and thank heavens that the selection committee could see the merit in some of these projects. So this is some of my team. We have about 14 people on there, what we call the Brussels team, and we went to Toronto this year to accept this. And again, it was really gratifying to be with all these people because it is about them. I mean, I'm only one person. I really am a party of one. I can't do it all on my own, and I'm the first one to say that, it's this support that has got us this far. Well, so leaving Brussels, I have another little community. It's called Vanastra, and it was the former RCAF base, Clinton. Clinton is on Highway 4. It's in another municipality, Central Huron, but we adopted, amalgamation 2001. Vanastra came into Huron East. It was an Air Force base starting in 1941, was closed in 1971. I believe, no offense to anybody that works for the federal government here, but the federal government walked away. They sold it to a private developer who, I work for a developer, it is about bottom line. You're not doing it for the goodness of your heart. And unfortunately, what has happened is that over the years that it has declined. We have a number of derelict buildings, and it's maybe not the prettiest. It's okay, it's not the prettiest site. But what it does have, that 5 minutes? Oh, we're over?
We have 10 minutes for questions.
Oh dear, oh, that's really too bad. So can I quit now? And then do I have 10 minutes to show my video?
We go to 3. And
Oh.
we have question and answers, and it's 2:52.
2:52. Well, if I put my video on right now, do you think I could do that? Yeah, we can do it. Okay, all right, okay, the video. Okay, listen, this is in the international airport, London International Airport. I struck a deal with them. We've got a 31-foot mural. Trust me, it is getting so much attention. I'm going to clean that up. And we've got a great spirit there, and we do have a number of businesses that are doing quite well, but unfortunately they're being tarred by the same brush that, those little buildings that are not looking good. Okay, Renee, work with me. Okay, here we are. Okay, oh yeah, there's some installation. Okay, that's it. Oh, historic plaquing project in Seaforth, that's another. Oh, town hall restoration, thanks ACO. It was because of Preservation Works program, that was a catalyst. Oh, another program that we're doing, I can't even go into it. Talk to me later. Okay. Oh my gosh, there's so much happening. Okay, here it is. Because of that little video that, I put on Facebook that won the award for bricks and mortar, I attracted the attention of Chris Cooper. And Chris Cooper, editor-in-chief of Edifice magazine. Oh, he came to see me, he filmed my little communities. I love it. So anyway, I'm gonna show you. Darn, I've just got so much. Oh, okay. Uh-oh.
Take your time. Take your time.
Oh, isn't that sweet? And that's not what Renee said. No.
Well, I want to play bad boy, but we have 3 o'clock and then we're on to another program. And the bus leaves at 3.
Oh, does a bus leave at 3? Okay. Oh, guess what? It says it needs a plug-in. Okay, guess what? We're not going to be able to. Oh, I'm so sorry to hear that.
Can we go online?
Yes, you can.
Can you give us the address?
I will. I will send you when we're finished, because it's a very strong, it's a crazy little address. I will give it to you. Okay, come help me. Come here. Okay. Okay, hold the bus.
Oh, people are going to the boat?
Oh yeah. They're gonna send me down with the boat. Oh, you are so... I love that guy. Okay. If you have to leave, it's okay. But thanks for humoring me. By the way, did you know I just love my communities? And I love this music. Oh. Don't you love it? Oh, you know what? It's high definition. Let's get that off. There's 2 ways to skin a cat, okay?
I'm Christopher Cooper. I am first off a Canadian, a very proud Canadian. That's good. I started this journey to create a television series with the idea of the viewer seeing Canada through my eyes. I am the cameraman. I am also the film crew. I take the road less traveled and find these sometimes overlooked towns and cities that have so much to offer with so many stories to be told. I want every Canadian, and indeed every viewer from around the world, to fall in love with my Canada, to see what we have to offer in our own backyards. Quite simply, it's time to put Canadians first. It's time to put Canada first, this phenomenon called Canada. Seaforth, Ontario is located along Highway number 8, or the Goderich Road, just east of Lake Huron. The lovely little hamlet of Brussels is located 24 kilometers north of Seaforth, along the Maitland River. Both Seaforth and Brussels are now located in the municipality of Huron East. which has some of the most rich agricultural land in Ontario. The town of Walton, which is located between Seaforth and Brussels, is home to the world-famous Walton Raceway, which hosts the annual Parks Canada Trans-Can Grand National Championship of Motocross, which takes place each August.
The thing that I love about Seaforth is that I have chosen to be here, even though my family roots are here. Doesn't matter where you go, there seems to be a connecting link, and people are proud to say they're from here. They're proud to say that they live here, and they're proud to say that they know someone from here. And I think that happens everywhere we go. And everywhere I go, there seems to be something about Seaforth that just connects people.
Originally known as Four Corners, developer James Patton purchased the land and laid out a town site in 1855. One who visits downtown Seaforth will quickly realize that this town has an amazing number of well-preserved commercial and public buildings, constructed during the last quarter of the 19th and early 20th century. Of course, with every small town usually built in haste during boom times, many of the early structures in Seaforth were built of timber. In September 1876, at 2 o'clock in the morning, a fire broke out at Mrs. Ricketts Candy and Grocery Store, raging through Main Street, destroying 12 acres of the business section. The town quickly rebounded, and Main Street was rebuilt with masonry structures, which we enjoy today. Most of the downtown is protected as a provincially designated heritage conservation district, which includes 54 19th century commercial and civic buildings. The interesting thing about downtown Seaforth is that the current buildings which replaced those destroyed in the fire of 1876 have been built in a single decade from the 19th century, providing a unique perspective of the mid-1870s, when architecture became more of an art form rather than just simple utility. In many ways, Seaforth is truly one of the best preserved Victorian-era streetscapes in Ontario. You will see that when one views archival images, that not much has changed, making Seaforth a delight for the art tourist. Great Fire of 1876, Alexander Cardno set to work building his most amazing building, the Cardno Block, which in my opinion is one of the best preserved Second Empire commercial buildings in Canada. Although the building has many Italianate features, such as elaborate stone label molding and stops, forming a hood with central key over round-head windows. The Second Empire tower and mansard roof, tiled with polychromatic painted slate tiles, makes this building the absolute jewel in the crown of the downtown streetscape. This building, built in 1877, has little changed. The original timber windows are still in place on the second level, including the lucarnes or dormers on the mansard roof and tower. The 68-foot high clock tower that looms over the street, topped with wrought iron, still keeps perfect time on its clock faces. The renowned Cardno Music and Concert Hall once formed the second story of the Cardno Block. Advertisements in the Huron Expositor announced a grand dramatic company, opera company, or vaudeville show regularly performing at the Cardno Hall. This building still remains as one of Seaport's most important landmarks.
Thank you for your patience.